All right, so for casting and splinting, a few of the items that we are going to need is a stockinette. This is a 2-inch stockinette. We will also need 2 to 3-inch cast padding, and then 2 2-inch cast tape, along with a water source, some towels, and then of course, if we are taking the cast off, we will want a cast saw. Just stopped it. It is also recommended that you have a pair of gloves to protect your hands. You might want to take your rings and your watch off due to the stickiness of the cast tape. So indications for a short arm cast would be any type of boxer's fracture, distal wrist fracture, even maybe a mid-shaft forearm fracture. But let's talk about stepwise. First step is to measure your stockinette. If you'll turn your hand over for me, Juliana, we're going to measure a little bit long, right at the base of the fingers. And the reason is because we want to have enough to fold down. Technically, our cast should go about to the midline of the hand. So we will measure our stockinette. The nice thing about stockinette is that it can be longer than we need. You never really want to go shorter than what you need. I've measured. I'm now going to place that in her hand. And what I'm going to do is just cut a little thumb section right there, so that when this goes over her hand, her thumb will pop right out. Next, with the 2-inch cast pad, I'm going to start covering her hand. Juliana has a very small hand, so sometimes you might have to split it, which you can do in order to make it easier to work with. That's what's great about it. I always like to add extra protection around the thumb. So we'll split it in half and put some extra protection around the thumb. And then we will go ahead and start from distal to proximal. The key is not to have too many wrinkles, so if you need to, you can always pull them away. And we're going to roll. One thing I want you to recognize is that I'm rolling this way. If I were to take this tape and put it, or this cast pad and put it over like this, I'm now pulling and can increase the stress that can occur to her hand. So always, we roll, okay? So we just roll like a little piece of tape, take that piece there, and we just roll, roll, roll. Usually you're gonna want maybe 2 layers. However, because again, Juliana is somewhat smaller, I'm gonna do just a small layer back down the other way. That's probably too loose. Does it feel kind of tight?
No, it is without.
There you go. Okay. Good. Remember, the cast padding has nothing to do with stability. It has everything to do with comfort, all right? So for Juliana, we're just going to use 1 roll because she does have such a small hand. If you are working with a big hand, unfortunately, you'll have to use 2 rolls of the cast padding, okay? Now that she's all set, what I'm going to ask her to do is turn her hand this way, if she's able to, and pretend like she's holding a cup of soda pop. So just like that. Now obviously you want to make sure that you're positioning her in least amount of strain and stress on whatever fracture is going on. I've noticed here that I've got a gap, so this is nice and malleable. I can make it smaller, bigger, and cover that gap as well, okay? And this just kind of happens due to the size of the person and the way in which their body habitus is. So anytime you see an opening, you always just want to make sure that you're covering it, okay? So Juliana's going to stay in this position as if she's holding a Coke can, and that's going to be the best position. It's neutral position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our cast tape. The great thing about this cast tape is that it has been chemically manufactured to be able to harden. All it needs is either water or just air, all right? Now, For those of you that maybe have never done this before, I would recommend on your very first few casts that you don't put water on this, or if you do, it's a very small amount. And the reason is because it will allow you to pull it off, put it back on, pull it off, put it back on if you need to, as you're learning the process and learning what works best. I'm going to go ahead and get it wet under the water, and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'm opening it up. As you can see here, it's just 2 inches. It's real tiny. It's real malleable. It moves pretty darn quick, but it is very sticky. All right, so water source. I am just basically going to go through and then squeeze. So you notice it was just 1, 2. When we do our clinic, casting clinic, you will have a bucket. I want you to dip it in the bucket and pull it immediately out, all right? As long as you've wrung it out, you don't have any water or any issues that you're gonna have to deal with. Again, gloves are great because this can be very, very sticky. So I'm gonna go around to this side of Juliana. And what I like to do is I like to start at the wrist itself, just because it gives me a nice area to play on. Again, you're rolling the tape onto the wrist. You are not pulling and placing it, all right? That's key, very important. Your first cast, if you pull it and lay it down, will come back because it's too tight and the patient is in pain. I'm gonna start at the wrist, all right? And Juliana, I'm just gonna give you a little bit of pressure here. It shouldn't be too tight, but it should feel snug, like a nice pair of socks. All right, the thumb is always the toughest area, so there's a couple things that you can do. I like to have, instead of folding it, some people will fold it, and that's completely fine. I like to have a pair of scissors available, and I'm just gonna cut out that edge, okay? And as long as we have something on the floor, you can drop it on the floor, all right? I'm gonna crisscross the wrist, making sure that she's always in that neutral position, okay? And again, I'm gonna come up around the top. Really only wanna do this about twice, because unfortunately it will tighten up pretty quick, and it will tighten up pretty quick and can bunch up in that area. All right, and we'll cut that again. And then I'm gonna go down the rest of the arm, all right? Juliana, I want you to know that this will get just slightly warm. It's not going to burn you, but you should start to feel that warming up. Just be aware of that. How does this feel?
Good.
Okay, does it feel tight in any section?
Right here in the middle.
Right here in the
just a
middle?
little bit,
Okay.
but
And if that's where our fracture is, that's where we want it just to be a little bit tight, so that we're giving that support to the reduced fracture. And again, around the thumb. Because Juliana is so small, I'm actually gonna just stop here because there's a little bit of analness to my thinking. And so I like to fold this down, and then I like to fold this down here as well. And the reason is because it just gives it a little bit of a finish, and it's starting to warm up. So again, you want her to stay in that Coke can position. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put the hand or the wrist posteriorly. So if you guys can see that, that is technically the neutral position of the hand, okay? How does this feel?
good.
Okay, we're gonna do our second cast tape. We're gonna get it on there quickly because that other one is setting up pretty quick. Now this one is more so just for the fancy part of it. It's to make it look good. It might be for stability, but technically it's more so just to kind of clean up these little edges. Always let your patients know that these will dry pokey, and they will poke, and they will cause some pain. So if we need to, we can always use some material to be able to take care of that. And again, this is just more so for the actual look of it. Okay, is it starting to warm up there?
Mm-hmm.
So when all is said and done, you'll probably have 4 or 5 rounds around the wraps around the actual cast itself. I don't like that saying, but it's fine. Come on now. Good. All right, and I'm going to cut it off here because I don't need that much more. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to start molding this cast into a position that is of most comfort for Juliana. One thing about molding, do not just keep your hands here and talk the story, blah, 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 because what will happen is you'll get dense in those positions, and now that patient has a spot that's just rubbing, all right? And so we're gonna just kind of come here. Went a little too high on your hand, sorry about that. Tuck that in a little bit more. Again, it's sticky. Some places will have you put lotion on the hand, and what that does is it keeps me from going home with you and just lets me mold the cast in the way that we need to. So moleskin is something that we can always put on the areas that are going to be close to the skin that might cause blistering or chapping or cutting. So keep that in mind, that that's always an option. If we were to go towards the thumb, maybe it's a MCP fracture or carpal metacarpal fracture, what we could do is put a stockinette here, do a thumb spica, and make that thumb just stay in that position there. So a lot of things can occur with a lot of options with just the short arm cast. You can see I'm real sticky here in a minute. As it hardens, I will no longer stick to her. So we'll just let that rest for a minute. Most important, after you are done, take a look. Is there cap refill? Can you feel this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you feel that? Again,
Yes.
cap refill. All right. The great thing about a cast as well is that if for some reason you notice that maybe this is going to be a pressure point, I can go in and snip it just a little bit to make sure that there's an opening or widening, okay? And you can always flatten this out if you need to, as long as it's malleable. Once it starts to harden, unfortunately, you really are not able to do much with it other than cut it off and start all over. So, casting instructions. This is not to be used as a weapon, okay? Please keep it clean and dry, best that you can. Try not to put anything down into the cast to scratch if it starts to itch. If it does, just tap it, all right?
Okay.
As this cast, as your swelling in your hand goes down, the cast will start to shrink. You should be able to do some movements in the cast, but I don't want you doing full range of movements. If you are, you come back and we'll recast you. One test, always to make sure that it's not too tight, is can I stick a finger down into the cast itself? In this case I can. Up in here is a little bit tighter, so I probably needed to go just a little bit further down. Again though, right now for stability and for fracture repair and healing, this cast would do. Okay. How does it feel?
It's getting pretty hard,
Yep.
but
So,
it feels fine.
so I don't know if the camera can hear this, but that little string is now solid. And cut. So this is the cast saw that we will be using for removing the cast. A couple things that I want to talk to you about in regards to the cast saw itself. Number one, it is not an oscillating saw, it is a vibrating saw. So the likelihood of actually cutting somebody should be very limited. However, if I'm coming at you with this saw, it can be very scary, especially if you're a 4-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, any younger child, or anybody like Juliana who has never had a cast before. So you really want to talk to them about how the cast works. Sometimes you can turn it on and just brush it against your skin to show that it's not going to cut them. So I say that with the understanding that we will use it appropriately. What I like to do is hold the saw close here with my knuckle bent. And the reason is because then I can use that to help protect when I am cutting, all right? So I'm using that finger as a guide. So, other instruction on how to use it is you never saw up the arm. So you never bring it all the way up. It comes in small chunks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because of the stockinette underneath, when you reach that give, you know you're done. So that's when you pull the hand out. So most of the time you will not cut the patient, but you could burn the patient. So just be very, very aware of that. This is a smaller round saw. We'll get a bigger one on for the day of casting, only because then you'll have a little bit more control with it. So with that being said, Juliana, this is going to be loud. It will also be messy. We don't have a vacuum on this one, so just be prepared. If at any point in time you feel like you're getting burnt or you feel like it's enough and you need a break, I want you to stick your left hand out as if you're telling me to stop.
Okay.
All right? Just because I might not be able to hear you. So always have some type of an out for them that they can say, enough, I can't handle the vibration. Some individuals, depending on where the fracture is, they may have a little bit of pain, but it's more so that inflammatory, it's healed, but oh, whoa, that's a little tender because they've been in a cast for up to 6 to 8 weeks. All right? So just keep that in mind. All right, so you'll notice that the saw is not going around. All right, so in position, we're going to start up here actually. How's that feel?
It just feels like vibrating.
Okay. And again, I'm just going real slightly through. As I get to the thicker area, we're going to have to hold it there for just a little bit longer. How you feeling? Right here. You'll notice how that kind of sunk in. I mean, then getting closer and closer to that actual site. One side done. Usually we bivalve this, so I will cut it here And then I will have either the patient lay down or I will come and cut it here as well. All right, so just so you know, it's the same technique that we will do. If you want to come a little bit closer, what you'll see is as I'm pulling the cast apart, you can start to see that underlayer available. Okay. All right, are you ready to do the other side?
Yes.
Okay. Are you ready to get out of the cast?
Yes.
How is the pain? Is there any pain?
No.
Okay, have you felt any hot spots?
Just up by my hand a little bit, but not
Okay.
really. It just felt like a lot of vibrating.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna switch sides here and hopefully we have enough space. How are you feeling?
Good.
Okay. Just so you know, this does get a little warm as you're holding it. So we'll want to make sure that we're taking breaks in between cast removal. The next step that we will have is you can take a pair of scissors and cut the stockinette area here. And then we will have cast spreaders that we will stick inside that will break the cast apart. Okay? Sorry, Scarlett, my hand is not. Let me get- Always know where you're cutting and where your hands are. Usually the hand or the wrist will smell because it's been in a cast in the last few weeks, but technically you should be able to pull all of it off, very similar to this. Let's take a look at the skin. Make sure that there's been no blisters or cuts, because sometimes there can be. Take a look at that, and then you're good to go. That's it.